We're rolling?
Yeah.
Okay. I still can't see anything.
It's okay.
Okay. Hi everyone. Sorry, we're still trying to figure out how this whole live stream works. So I'm still trying to load it on my computer. I don't see myself, but I think you can see me. So can you respond in the chat if you can hear me or if you can see me? Okay, I see myself now, so there's a little bit of lag and I hear myself too, so I think we're doing okay. Oh, you're responding. Okay, you can hear me and see me. Great. So, thank you so much for joining in on our first ever live stream Q&A. I'm so excited to be interacting with you guys like this. I see you already have questions and I'm so excited to dive into them. I'm a little nervous because this is the first time we've ever done this kind of live Q&A over the internet, and I'm not used to doing this kind of thing, so bear with me a little bit on that, but hopefully we'll be able to answer a lot of questions today. Okay, so diving right in. And so there are a lot of questions I see coming in already, so I'm probably not going to be able to answer all of them, but I will do my best to answer as many as possible, and they might be a little bit of brief answers just because there are so many, but again, I will do my best to answer all the questions as best as I can. So I guess diving right into some, let's look at the top of the list here to see some of the first questions. Lauren, tell us what happened that led you to your hospitalization. Okay, yeah, so I talked a bit about this in my experience with my recent hospitalization video, and I think that there was several just kind of generally life-stressing factors that led to my hospitalization. So these included things like a busier work schedule, which was also affecting my sleep schedule, which was a big one. My sleep schedule is really important in terms of maintaining wellness. I was also having a bit of relationship conflict, which added additional life stress. I just like the typical life stresses piled up, like taking care of kids and staying on top of just all of the typical life stuff. So it was kind of just an amalgamation of a lot of different factors that led to my hospitalization, and then of course stopping taking my meds as well, which kind of happened as a result of all these stressors just piling up and leading towards having an episode. Hi Lauren, I've been diagnosed with schizophrenia and I'm returning to university this January. What advice might you have for a student returning after a psychotic break / diagnosis of schizophrenia? So that's a really great question, and that's something that I've struggled with too in terms of how to effectively go back to school after you have an episode or a hospitalization or anything like that. And I know that it can be really nerve-wracking. But I think that the most important advice that I can give is to just give yourself a lot of self-compassion and to just kind of be aware that you're not always going to be able to perform at the level that you were able to before, and that's okay. Some cognitive changes may have happened, or just changes in terms of your negative symptoms or even positive symptoms that might make school a little bit more difficult. And I think just treating yourself with some compassion around that will go a long way. You may also want to make some arrangements with your school's accommodation services or whatnot, just to kind of start that conversation early before any crisis or anything like that happens where you need accommodations ASAP. So just to get enrolled with it's usually called accommodation services or disability services or accessibility services, I think. So get registered with them as early as possible. I would recommend doing that. You may even want to have a conversation with some of your professors in terms of just coming up with plans around maybe increased deadlines for assignments or just stuff like that. So yeah, just having a general plan for those kinds of things. Good luck though when you head back to university. That's very exciting. When would you suggest telling an employer about your mental health? Would you tell them during an interview? Have you ever felt treated unfairly after informing them? Yeah, great question. I did do the video on when to disclose to your employer about your mental health concern or mental health difficulty, but I guess just a brief answer would be, I would personally, and so this is all just my opinions, by the way. I just want to preface this all by saying that this is just my opinions and this is my own advice based on my own experiences. I would recommend waiting a little bit before you told them, unless they seem like they're very accepting and open to accommodating you however you need. If you can tell that right off the bat, you may want to open up a conversation earlier. But a general rule of thumb, I think, would be to wait and to kind of establish yourself within the environment before you open up that conversation with your boss. But once you are more established, I do think that it is important to open up a conversation with your boss, just in case anything arises in the future that you may need special accommodations for, or you may need more support for. And to just have those pillars of support in place for if anything should arise. Would you tell them during an interview? I personally wouldn't, but that's just me. You may feel more comfortable doing so, and you may feel like it is something that they need to know as soon as the interview. So again, that's a really personal decision. I personally wait a little bit for the reasons that I just mentioned, but it's, again, entirely up to each individual. Have you ever felt treated unfairly after informing them? Yeah, so I told my employers about my mental health struggles. I didn't give them any specifics or anything, but I was having a bit of a depressive episode and I needed some time off of work. And what ended up happening was, after I disclosed that to them, they ended up pressuring me to resign. So that was kind of a really unfortunate display of stigma within the workforce still around mental health and mental illness. Excuse me. Okay, Lauren, do you hear voices? And if so, can you have a two-way conversation with them, or do they ignore what you are saying and thinking? Yes, I do hear voices. Um, it kind of depends. I usually try not to engage with them in terms of having an actual back and forth dialogue, but sometimes I do. It's usually just within my own head. So I hear the voices and I speak back internally within my head. I don't usually talk back out loud. Sometimes they just ignore what I talk back and just keep going with whatever tangent they're on. But sometimes it can be a bit more of a back and forth. So, yeah. I also really wanted to say that I really love the back and forth that's going on in the chat right now. It's really nice to see community being built around the channel. So that's really, really encouraging to see. Okay, this one says, I have a strange question. Does anyone not want to go on medication due to the fact that they fear it will either make things worse or cause some trouble to the balance or routine? I'm not sure I understand the second part of the question, but the first part of the question, Can everybody hear me now? Sorry, we lost audio for a bit there.
Yeah. It should be back.
Can you hear me now? Okay, yes, I see no audio. Can you hear me now? Okay, good. Okay. Oh wait, no audio. Got it. Yes. Okay. Sorry. Thank you again for bearing with us. I will try to keep an eye on the bottom of the feed as well. Thank you everyone for responding. Okay, let's scroll back up to some of the questions. So I think the last one was, how long did it take for you to accept your diagnosis? So that's a great question, and it's one that I can't really give a straight answer to because I think it's an ongoing process and one that I'm still struggling with, or still working on, rather. There's been definitely ebbs and flows in terms of my level of acceptance with the disorder, and I think that I am in a generally good place in terms of self-acceptance around the disorder, but there definitely still is farther to go in terms of accepting it, and especially when I have dips like what just happened with my recent hospitalization, it kind of is harder to accept my diagnosis even more. So yeah, it's an ongoing process and one that I am still working on. Okay. Ooh, they're coming so fast. Thank you, everyone. Sorry, scrolling back up. Okay, the love of my life has schizophrenia and both of us struggle with codependency. How can I help him be/feel more independent while still caring for him? Thank you. I think this is something that a lot of people who struggle with their mental health kind of struggle with, is the issue around codependency in romantic relationships. And it is something that comes up within my own relationship, but I think that just being really open and honest with your partner about boundaries and about what your personal boundaries are and what their personal boundaries are, and how we can work together to respect that and to encourage adhering to that as much as possible. So having open conversation about each other's boundaries and having open conversations about the codependency issues that come up. How do you deal with your flat affect? My family doesn't really understand why my affect is so flat. Yeah, it's hard to describe some symptoms, or to describe some symptoms to family members or to loved ones who are seeing them but not really fully understanding them, and flat affect is definitely one of them. I definitely do struggle with flat affect, and I've been told by some of my loved ones that that is the case, but I just try to bring attention to the fact that it is because of my illness. It doesn't mean that I'm not capable of feeling emotion or of being responsive in a meaningful way to their emotions or whatnot, but just it's a simple symptom of my illness that is something that you can kind of explain, and hopefully they will empathize with a little bit more. Excuse me, sorry. Okay, let's scroll down to the bottom here again. Do you ever get scared of the likelihood of getting delusional during labor if you have a pregnancy? Yeah, so pregnancy is definitely something that I've been talking about with my partner lately, or more so, just in terms of future planning and whatnot, but that is definitely a fear of mine, that my illness will play a role in terms of the pregnancy and in terms of having a child. I'm not so much scared of being delusional during labor, although now that's kind of a fear, thank you. But it's more the fear around passing on the illness to my child, or not being able to be an adequate mother because of my illness. But I'm working on that. I think that comes back again to the piece around self-acceptance, and I'm working on realizing that I can be a good mother figure. I am a good mother figure right now to Rob's 2 kids, and in terms of passing on the illness to your child, that would be awful, and I would be upset about it. But I think who better to raise somebody with schizophrenia than somebody who can really understand and empathize with what they're going through. So that's kind of how I talk myself around that issue. Follow-up question to this: does it scare you that you would have to get off your meds to be pregnant? So I've talked about this with my doctor, and he decided, and we both kind of agreed that it would be more harmful than good to go off my medications while I was pregnant. So he would keep me on the bare minimum of medications, and ideally only ones that haven't shown any harm to the fetus or to the baby. But that would definitely be the case where I would stay on medications while pregnant. Does anyone in your family suffer with schizophrenia? Not that I know of. My family hasn't never really spoken too openly about their mental health struggles, so I don't know for sure, but not as far as I know. Sorry, I'm just reading a bunch of comments here. Bear with me. Okay, so did this come and go without medications in the beginning? And if so, at what point was it that you realized that this is an illness that you will live with forever? What made you decide to take medication? So yeah, before I was on medication, I definitely had like ebbs and flows in terms of the illness, in terms of episodes coming and going, and struggling with a wide breadth of symptoms with the illness. At what point did you realize this is an illness you will live with forever? I don't even know if I've realized that fully yet. I think that's part of the self-acceptance piece around the diagnosis still, and again, it's an ongoing effort. But I think after my first hospitalization in Alberta, when I was first diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder, I think it kind of clicked that this was something that I was going to be dealing with for the rest of my life, and I needed to start making more healthy choices around how to manage it. And so that was why I decided that I needed to take medication regularly. How do you manage negative symptoms? Great question. I'm still trying to figure it out. Negative symptoms are really hard because they're less obvious than positive symptoms. You know, positive symptoms are very obvious that you're experiencing, or not obvious that you're experiencing a delusion, but it's obvious to other people that you're experiencing a delusion or a hallucination or paranoia or that kind of thing. But it's less obvious when you're experiencing negative symptoms like withdrawal or loss of energy or depressive symptoms or that kind of thing. So, and it's also hard to have insight around these things as to how to help yourself out of it. But I think what helps for me is talking about it as much as possible. And this is really hard for me. I really have a hard time articulating what I'm experiencing when I'm going through these things, but my partner tries to encourage me to talk about it as much as possible, and that is helpful. Also, the idea around like faking it till you make it, so like going for a walk and just being active in your everyday life really helps to kind of boost you back into feeling a little bit more like yourself and a little bit more normal or at baseline. There's a comment here that I want to draw attention to. It says, if you guys have medical questions and concerns, contact your primary doctor, mental health specialist, or go to ER. And I totally want to corroborate that. I'm not here to provide any medical advice or anything like that. I'm here to simply talk about my experiences with the illness and to give kind of general advice based on that. But if you are looking for specific advice in terms of your health or your mental health, make sure to talk to your doctor. That is definitely a huge recommendation, to go to your doctor with any concerns that you have and to definitely have a conversation with them about any concerns.
There's a question about the percentage.
Where? Sorry, Rob's talking to me in the back, trying to point me to one of the questions. What is it?
Somebody was asking about the percentage of hereditary inheritance.
What is it again?
13%.
13%. Okay, so somebody asked about the percentage of hereditary inheritance, and this is something that we looked up before, and it's 13%. So how does that work again?
So your child will have a 13% chance of inheriting.
Okay, yeah. So
This is based on twin studies.
based on twin studies, if you were to have a child, your child has a 13% chance of inheriting schizophrenia. So it's not super high. It's higher than I would like. It's higher than I'm sure a lot of you would like, but yeah, 13% chance based on twin studies that have been done. I get asked this question a lot. What do you think caused your mental illness? That's a really hard one to answer. I really don't know. A lot of factors. I was kind of depressed as a teenager. I was depressed as a teenager, and I went through different life circumstances that kind of were a little traumatizing, that may have triggered my mental illness. They definitely did not cause it. There's no correlational cause and effect proven there, but it is proven that stressful life events can trigger the onset of mental illness. So there were things in my life that may have triggered the onset of it, but I think that it was a mixture of biological and environmental factors that contributed to me having schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder. Do you work? If yes, how does schizophrenia affect you? Do you also have slow movement? So no, I'm not currently working. I did work as a research assistant most recently and as a social worker before that. How does schizophrenia affect you with work? I think it just is largely to do with understanding that I need to maintain a balance in my life. And so this really means like maintaining a good and healthy work-life balance, because if I take on too much, it throws everything out of whack and I'm sleeping too much, and then my symptoms start coming up, and it all kind of spirals from there. So making sure that I'm not taking on too much, but still engaging in meaningful work. I think having conversations with your bosses once you're more established within your position will really help to kind of mitigate anything that comes up in terms of stressors or in terms of extra accommodations that you may need. And then do you also have slow movement? I I don't think so. I don't think that's really something that I struggle with. Okay, which is the worst condition, paranoid schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder? So again, I'm not a doctor, but I just want to kind of clarify that from what I've read and what I understand, it's a bit of a spectrum disorder. So bipolar disorder and schizophrenia are along the same spectrum, with bipolar over here and then schizophrenia over here, and schizoaffective disorder falling somewhere in the middle of that. It's my understanding that paranoid schizophrenia and schizophrenia are the same thing. Paranoid is just a subset of schizophrenia, but yeah, so I hope that kind of answers the question about how they all kind of relate to one another. Are you on any sort of disability benefit seeing as you don't work? Yes, I am. There's what's called here in Alberta the Assured Income for the Severely Handicapped, or AISH, and I am currently on that. And so it's really nice as kind of a fallback. So I'm not currently working right now, so it's nice to have some income as well as my benefits covered through there. And then when I do start working, when I am feeling well enough to work, the AISH payments stop, but I still have the benefits, the health benefits in line through AISH, which is really, really great as well. So there are programs in a lot of places that I would definitely recommend you look into if you're not already on, that can really help to support you through the periods where you're maybe not well enough to work, or yeah. Despite how difficult schizophrenia is there something positive that you gained from it? Has it taught you anything or helped you to grow in a certain way? So I love this question. So yeah, it's been really, really hard. And a lot of times I wish I didn't have it. But at the same time, I think that it's taught me a lot more empathy for other people. It's given me a wider breadth of experience in terms of the human experience, and the human emotions that you can experience. And I think it's really built a lot of empathy for my fellow man and for other people who may be going through similar struggles or difficulties, or just for anyone who's going through any kind of struggle or difficulty. I think it's built empathy around that. What's your opinion on talking about delusions with partners? My partner and I limit our conversations about them, and he finds this helps him entertain his delusions less. So if you find that works for you, that's awesome. And I would definitely encourage everyone to just kind of find what works for them. In terms of talking about delusions, I get really embarrassed about talking about my delusions. And Rob is really, really great and really supportive about making sure that I feel comfortable talking to him about these things, and he really encourages me to talk to him about them. But it's something that I really personally struggle with, and that I'm really working on trying to talk more openly with him about it. But if it's something that, because it does help to reality check when I do talk to him about it. It does help to just kind of be like, okay, that may be a little bit more of your delusional thinking, like, here's why, now how can we move past it? Like that's really helpful for me. But if for you to kind of avoid talking about the delusions is most helpful for your partner, then by all means, keep doing that. Do you feel psychotic episodes coming on early, and can you do anything to prevent them? Um, that's a hard question to answer, because yes, I think on some level I do feel my psychotic episodes coming on early. whether I can really insightfully identify them as such is another question. So I think it's the most helpful if there's someone who you can talk to, who you really trust, who you can talk to when you're first getting those inklings that something isn't quite right or that you're sliding into psychosis again. If you can talk to someone and kind of figure it out and have a dialogue with them about it, I think that would be really helpful. Someone who knows your history and knows what you're like when you're in psychosis, just to kind of confirm, like, yeah, I am seeing some warning signs here, or that kind of thing. I think that can be really helpful. Oh my goodness, so many questions. Thank you, everyone. um, do you think journaling would help at all? Writing out your realities and being able to reflect on them on a day-to-day basis. Um, I think that could be helpful. I don't personally do it, but if writing is something that helps you, then by all means give that a shot. Um, I would worry a little bit about myself slipping deeper into the delusion if I was constantly writing about them. So that might be something to kind of keep an eye out for. But if it helps you to kind of do some reality checking on your own, then that might be a great coping strategy. Okay, what do you think about being in relationships? I'm 30 and I haven't been in a relationship yet because of my schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. I'm afraid to tell anyone. Um, so yeah, I'm currently in a relationship and it went really really well in terms of telling and disclosing my partner about my illness. I'm so grateful that he was so supportive of it and just wanted to learn as much as he could and wanted to know as much as he could so that he could support me and kind of understand what I was going through. So I'm really fortunate to have had that, and I want to let you know that there are people out there who are going to accept you with your illness. I totally get, however, that it's a really scary thing because when I was dating before I met him, that was a huge fear of mine in terms of whether someone would accept me with my diagnosis, whether someone could love me with my diagnosis. But I've definitely learned that it is possible. And so I've also learned the importance of vulnerability, and I've learned how much you can get from being vulnerable and how much fuller your life can be by being vulnerable. And so I would really encourage you, if you do find someone who you feel that you might be comfortable opening up to about your diagnosis, to just be vulnerable and go there with them. I mean, the worst that can happen is that they don't accept you, and then that's not really somebody that you want to be with anyway, right? So I would encourage you to not give up on relationships and romance and whatnot, and to keep hope that you will find someone who will be able to accept you with your diagnosis. Um,
Why do you call your partner your partner?
does medication make you feel numb? If so, how do you find a balance in side effects and symptoms? I hate feeling numb and would rather feel. I totally get that. My medication does sometimes make me feel numb, or it just kind of blunts emotion a little bit, and I can't feel the range of emotion that I can feel when I'm off medication, or that I know I have been able to feel in the past when I'm off medication. And this can be really frustrating. And this is yet another reason why a lot of people go off their medications, because they get so fed up with these side effects that, yeah, they just don't want to be taking the medications anymore because, like you said, they want to feel. I think I think the way I talk myself out around this is just that, and the way I've been encouraged to by my therapist is just that kind of looking at like what's worse. Is having a little bit more stifled emotions on the one side of being medicated worse, or is being fully psychotic and experiencing all of my symptoms because I'm off medications worse? And for me, it's definitely the psychosis side of things, and being off medication, that is worse. And so just kind of having that conversation with myself about, okay, it is still possible to lead a meaningful life while I'm having these side effects of the medications. It's not really possible for me to lead a meaningful life with these really intense symptoms. So just kind of balancing it out like that within my head to kind of encourage myself to take my medications.
Do you notice any difference in mood with the change of season?
Okay, Rob's just telling me that there was one that is, do you notice any changes in mood with the change in season? Yes, definitely. That is a big one for me. Both of my last two hospitalizations, though 3 years apart, happened at the same time of year. I got hospitalized in the beginning of October, and it started kind of in September-ish. It started to get really bad around then. So yeah, fall is a hard one for me, and spring is a hard one for me. So I really need to be mindful of how I'm feeling during those season changes, and just kind of being more mindful of engaging in more self-care and just being more reflective of how I'm doing.
Do you want me to feed you some questions?
Sure.
What's your biggest advice to those newly diagnosed? How do you stay positive while dealing with the negatives associated with the illness? So what's your biggest advice to those newly diagnosed?
Okay, sorry, Rob's just reading me some questions. So basically the question was, what is your biggest piece of advice to someone who is newly diagnosed, and how do you stay positive in the face of a new diagnosis?
While dealing with negatives associated with the illness.
While dealing with negatives associated with the illness, sorry. My biggest advice to someone who's newly diagnosed is just, it sounds a little cliche, and I'm kind of like, oh, Lauren, but it will get better. I think that's my biggest piece of advice, is that the more you learn about yourself and the more you learn about the illness, the better equipped you will be to manage it. And so the more work you put into learning about your illness and learning about how it affects you, the better able you're going to be able to, again, manage it. And the better you're able to manage it, the better quality of life you're going to have. And so I just want to say that if you do put in that work, and you do the self-reflection piece, and figure out the best treatment plan for you with your doctors and whatnot, it will get better, because it will be easier to manage. Are you scared of your thoughts during the depressive phases, or do you feel like those dark thoughts are your real thoughts and you're faking other times? Yeah, so depression is kind of nasty like that. Like, it really takes over the way you think. And when I'm in those really depressive periods, it's really easy to get wrapped up in the narrative that this is the way it is, this is the way it always has been, this is the way it always will be, and I was just faking it before, or it wasn't really real. This is real. This depression, this despair is real, and it always is going to be this way. And I think it's really important to kind of address that cognitive distortion, I guess, and to just understand that that's not true. Like, you were happy before. It was real. You can be happy again. This is a phase. This is a health phase that can come to an end. So yeah, like, again, it can get better, and it will get better. So just keeping hope like that, and not getting too sucked into the narrative of it always being this way, and of these being the true thoughts. Um, are you done with school? Was school hard to go through with your disorder? No, I'm not done school yet. I am actually on a leave of absence right now, a medical leave of absence because of my illness flaring up. And so, yeah, it has been really hard to get through school with my illness. My second undergraduate degree that I got took 3 years to complete instead of the 1 year that it was supposed to take. So it, it hasn't been easy for me to get through school, but it's something that is really important to me. And so I'm kind of just keeping the dream of finishing alive and just telling myself that it doesn't matter if the trajectory of how long it takes me to complete a degree is longer than the typical. It doesn't matter. Everybody's path looks a little different, and it doesn't matter if it takes you a little longer or if you struggle a little more. You are still fully capable of getting there if you want to. Does the emotional bluntness impact the connection you have with Rob? Do you have to be more intentional about making him feel loved, respected, valued, etc.? I think it does. I think it does impact it a little bit. Sometimes he tells me that he doesn't feel entirely loved by me, or that I'm not being emotive enough about my feelings at a time where I'm more symptomatic. And that's really hard to hear because I love him all the time. I love him so much all the time, and I want him to know that. And so I think just having those conversations, I'm gonna get teared up. He's looking at him in the background. Yeah, it's really hard to hear that when he feels that I don't love him sometimes, because that's not the case, and it really is just the symptoms of my illness making it harder to communicate that I do. And so I think it's important to be more intentional with your partner about how you feel about them, and making sure you're kind of taking that extra step to make sure that they know that they're loved all the time by you, because sometimes you do deal with the flat affect or the negative symptoms, which make it harder for them to know or to feel loved sometimes. Um,
Can I make a suggestion?
yeah.
How do I deal with the negative symptoms, like no motivation? I have a hard time cleaning and I live by myself.
I already answered that one.
Sorry.
Do you have any tips or advice for people like you starting YouTube or getting involved as a mental health advocate or social media? On social media, sorry. Do I have any tips? I don't really know what I'm doing, to be perfectly honest. I think what's important is just being vulnerable again. There's so much that comes from being vulnerable, and so making sure that you are being vulnerable with your audience, and providing good information and good anecdotal information about your experiences, and just kind of helping to build that general empathy around mental health and mental illness. I would encourage anyone to get into mental health advocacy. I think it's so great. I think that there's so much work to be done, and we need all the help we can get. So I would definitely encourage you to do that. But yeah, vulnerability while still maintaining your own boundaries in terms of self-care. So not giving all of yourself all the time, still maintaining some boundaries in order to practice self-care. But yeah, vulnerability is great. What do you wish clinicians knew about schizophrenia? I'm sure clinicians know a lot about schizophrenia, and they probably know more than me about schizophrenia. So it's not so much what I want them to know about schizophrenia, but rather what I want them to know about people with schizophrenia. And that's just that I want them to remember that we are people. I think it's really easy to get carried away with a diagnosis and over medicalizing your treatment plan with a patient because of their diagnosis, and especially one that's kind of a more severe mental illness like schizophrenia. It can kind of be easy to get wrapped up in terms of the medical jargon around it and the diagnosis terms around it. And I think it's really important just to remember that the person you're treating is a person first and foremost, and they deserve to be treated as such. And I think that the most meaningful work that you can do with them happens when you're treating them as a human first and foremost. Okay, so this has been a really long video. This has been great. I've loved all your questions so far. I think I'm going to wrap it up shortly though, so I might take a couple more questions and then say goodnight for now, or a good day wherever you are in the world for now. So let's take a couple more questions. Do you feel the injection is better than pills? So I was on the injection. I made the video about my experience with being on the injection. And I think that it's a really, really great option, especially if you struggle with taking your medications regularly for whatever reason, like I did. I personally really didn't like the side effects, and the side effects that I was getting while on a different medication orally were a lot better than the side effects that I was getting on the injection medication. So I made the decision with my doctor to switch back to oral medication, also because I had moved in then with my partner, Rob, who could help monitor my intake of my meds a little bit better than when I was just living alone. So that was kind of why we made the switch back to oral medications. I don't think I would say that there's necessarily one that's better than the other. I think it's a very personal decision to make. But if you do struggle with taking your medications, whether that's just because you're forgetting about them or whether that's because you don't like the side effects or because you have delusions around them, I would encourage you to talk to your doctor about the injection, because it just takes away having to make that decision every day. And instead of having to make that decision about whether or not you're going to take your medications every day, instead you just have to make that decision every 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 3 months with your nurse or your doctor, whoever's administering the injection, by your side. So those are kind of the benefits to the injection. Okay, maybe we'll do one more. Sorry, I'm just trying to find another question. Sorry. Okay, can you describe some of your delusional thinking? How you know that it really is a delusion? Does it make it difficult to trust yourself? So my primary delusional thinking happens around medications, but I also get delusional thinking just that kind of permeates my interactions with other people. So I can get delusional thinking around thinking that people don't like me. That's a really common one that kind of gets intermingled with like a bit of social anxiety, I guess, but that can really flare up to an unhealthy level. My delusional thinking around meds is more like delusional thoughts that the doctors are trying to harm me or trying to use medications for mind control or to poison me or that kind of thing. That's a really common delusion that comes up for me. What was the second part of that question? Does it make it difficult to trust yourself? Yeah, it does a little bit, because when your mind is playing tricks on you and you kind of believe that delusional train of thought, it can make it really hard to trust your train of thoughts and to trust whether or not you're thinking clearly in any given moment. So that's why for me, it's really important to do that kind of reality checking with trusted individuals around me, to just kind of be like, okay, is this real? Do I have a good grasp of reality right now? Or like what's going on? What's really going on? So having somebody to do that reality checking with can be really helpful. So I think with that, I'm going to say goodnight. Thank you so much for tuning in to this first ever Q&A on living well with schizophrenia. I had so much fun answering your questions, and it's been so great kind of getting to connect with you a little bit more on this level, and it's been really wonderful. So thank you so much for joining me. We will, I think, definitely try to do this again sometime in the future. I will post it on the community board when that happens, and on my Instagram and Twitter. So be sure to keep tuned for that. So thank you so much again for watching, and wishing you all and your loved ones good health. Bye.